Welcome everyone to the Sunday Staff Debrief, where every week we chat about various diving topics. I'm your host Nicole, and as always, joined by our panel, Juicy and Rich. And this week, our special guest is UDC's very own Tech and Rebreather program lead, Elliot Cho. Welcome, Elliot.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you as well. And Elliot, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to UDC.
Excellent. So I've been here for about 5 years. Came down here to do my professional training, and I stayed around. I actually got the opportunity to be an AI and a guide and worked my way through the up to a rotational instructor. And then the opportunity came around in early 2019 to take over the technical program lead slot, and I just jumped at the opportunity.
Cool. And were you a tech diver before that, or how did you get into tech diving?
Yeah, so when I got down here, I was already a trimix rebreather diver, and that was something I got into I got into it 8 years ago, and it was became a very strong passion for me. I had done a lot of training and a lot of diving, and I got to the point where I needed a new challenge, and I took up rebreather. I just heard a lot about it, and no bubbles, the challenges of it, and that really fit my personality and melded great with the things I'd done in my past. So.
Mm-hmm. And what had you done in your past?
So I used to work in the power sports industry. I was in it for about 20-ish years. Most notably, I worked in professional racing for 7 years, from 2000 through 2007. And then I did a bit of part-time work 2008 through 2010. The highlights of that is in 2000 and 2001, I ran the official Ducati Superbike team for the US. And then the part-time stuff I did was also official Ducati Superbike. And we were the fastest privateer team for several races. And we actually managed to beat the factory teams on several occasions as well.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah,
Very cool.
It's interesting, but it also, again, fits my personality. Mm-hmm. I'm very much of a technical person. When I was doing that, I ran the engine management system and data acquisition. So I was the team nerd. But you'll have that.
So if you have a problem with your scooter here on Utila, then Elliot's your guy to fix it, right? It falls in his wheelhouse.
Or it sounds like just about anything. Anything electronic, technical.
Yeah. So.
Very cool. So on September 2nd, these three completed the deepest documented dive on Utila to 122 meters. Juicy, what appeals to you about doing deep technical dives?
What drew me to deep technical diving originally was the planning and the preparation aspect. I think all of us can say after the thousands of dives that we've done that throwing a single tank on your back and going to do a common recreational dive is not something we have to think about a lot. And one of the things that draws me to it personally, and I know these guys as well, is that whole planning and preparation aspect, that we can't just do this on a whim. We've spent weeks preparing for the dive that we just executed. We had a huge support team of very experienced divers to help us. We have extra gases. We sat in the office and went through plans and logistics and all these things that we do to do these dives. And that for me is what the big draw is that it's not just done on a whim. It's not something that we just show up in the morning and do that day. It's the preparation, the planning, and the practice that we do that really draws me to it.
I had the amazing opportunity to be the photographer on this dive. And once people saw my photos, a lot of them began to ask me, what is the point of going that deep in the first place? So, Rich, why go that deep?
There's several reasons. Juicy alluded to it just now when he talked about the planning. The planning is a serious thing. It's what I enjoy the most. You should see our message group chat. We've got 5, 6, 7 plans that we've gone through, ignored. So it's a challenge before we're leading up. Then we go through the gas blending phase, we're briefing, we're preparing our equipment, lots of meticulous things. I know that's what Elliot really enjoys. He loves to fiddle with his gear, make sure that's all perfect. But the overriding reason that I go that deep, and I'm sure these two is the same, is the physical and technical challenge of the whole thing. It's difficult. It's not easy to go down there with that many tanks on, and then to come back up is even harder because you have to hold the stops almost perfectly. You really can't go another meter up without exposing yourself to an inappropriate risk profile. And then by the time you get to the last stop, the sense of accomplishment that you get from doing that, and the fact that you've spent so long under the water and you've gone somewhere that, to be perfectly honest, almost no human's ever been to before. Of the 40 million certified divers, 25 million of them are PADI certified. How many will have been past 122 meters, 400 feet? 1,000, 2,000, who knows? So that sense of accomplishment afterwards is something that we do the big dives for as well.
Now we've discussed the why we would go this deep, but what does it actually take, Elliot, to get to 122 meters?
So that's a great question. To get to 122 meters takes really pretty substantial effort. Besides the dive team, we had 6 support divers. We had a total of 30 tanks that we needed to blend for this. So it takes a lot of coordination, a lot of time, a lot of preparation. Just between the dive team for ourselves, our 3, we had 17 tanks that we carried down. So that's quite a substantial load. We had support divers that would come down and meet us. Our deep support team, who are technical divers themselves, met us at 48 meters, which is already well beyond the recreational dive limits. And then we had a second support team meet us at 21 meters to basically help us get through the end of the decompression, the shallow decompression. We did a lot of other things as well. We set up a shot line, so we had a guide all the way from the surface down to 122 meters. So we knew where we were going, and on the ascent back up, we knew where we had to go as well. And that, without that, it would have been incredibly difficult. We had one person in the water who, his job was to manage the shot line. He was on the float, and he was looking down and looking at the shore and making sure that the float line didn't drift out to sea. So it was a concerted effort by everybody involved, and I think we all agree that we couldn't have done it without everybody's support, and we are incredibly grateful for the people we had.
The surface support team was really important. Elliot touched on it there. We had a guy, Andrew, who was on the float. He stayed in the water the whole time. He didn't go diving, and his job was to, as Elliot has said, make sure the float stays in the same place, but also to relay messages. He would take messages back to the captain and another surface support we had on the boat, Lewis. He was helping with logistics on the boat, getting people in and out of the water. But Andrew was an absolute star of the day. He really helped us out. I'm not entirely sure we could have done it as smoothly as we had if we hadn't had somebody on that line. And then having the captain as well was a huge benefit.
Yeah, people automatically assume that the divers execute the dive, which we do, but we needed help from people to execute this particular dive. And Andrew was instrumental. Lewis on the boat was instrumental. A lot of times if you're doing deep technical dives and there's problems, you're signaling to the surface via SMBs or different lift bags and things like that, which we avoided because we had enough people there to help us. And then of course having an experienced captain or somebody that knows the terrain and is able to find you the right location. So we had Captain Ray aboard the Old Tom, where we spent probably 10-15 minutes kind of doing a expanding square search pattern with the boat, so to speak, to find the exact depth that we wanted, and it turned out really well. We I don't want to say we got lucky, because it wasn't luck, it was execution, but we found the right spot, and we were able to do the dive in a really excellent location, and Andrew had the line in the spot. Went down to 426 meters, I believe the line went to, and it was about 10 meters below the line that was the bottom of the wall, and about 15 meters south was the reef wall itself. So it all worked out really well.
It sounds like the visibility was really good as well, which probably helped for communication.
Yeah. It was dark, but it was clear.
It's spectacular down there. I would estimate that the visibility was in the 60 to 70 meter range. So when we're down there, you can see the entire dive site. It just opens up. It's dark, but we were off the wall. We could see the wall. We could see the sand going below us, and it's almost emotional. It is emotional to see that, because you're looking at it and you can't believe that you're there and you're looking at it. and it's really cool. You look up and the wall disappears on the way up and you see just nothing but blue. A light spot, that's the sky, but it's just a light spot and everything else is this incredible deep blue that's, it's just mesmerizing.
We had obviously the support team and the captain, but the divers in the water with us as well are incredibly important. They carry with them spare gas. So if we have a lost gas situation, they're there to keep us safe. So we had lots of extra gas which needed to be blended as well, not just our tanks, but we had another 13 tanks in the water of various mixes for various levels to help us out. And then perhaps the most thankless task of the day fell to Justin, one of our staff members here. He was shuttling tanks for us. So when we knew that tank was finished with or wasn't required anymore, he would take it off of us and carry them up to the surface to relieve some of the pressure on our bodies. Carrying 5, 6 and 7 tanks isn't an easy task. So any time that somebody can take some of that off of us, it's a huge thanks. So we had Drew, Justin, we had Levi and Duncan in the water with us as well, and they performed a massively vital role throughout the whole dive.
How much extra weight do you think you each had?
Ooh,
we didn't need any lead.
I didn't need any lead, that's for sure. You go past a certain depth, and it's just free fall from that. Yeah, you're going down pretty quick.
Yeah, I would say that going into the water, because I put most of my tanks on before I got into the water, standing up to get to the end of the boat, I had 240 pounds of gear.
Wow.
It's a lot, and to be able to stand up, that's go to the gym, do some squats, put everything on, stand up and get to the end of the boat.
Lots of leg days.
Lots of leg days.
Awesome. We've talked a bit about gas blending, but just how important is gas blending to the safety of dives like this?
The gas blending is absolutely critical. We can safely dive air down to 56 meters. Beyond that, we need to start adding helium to offset some of the risks of higher oxygen exposure and higher nitrogen. Everybody in the diving community has heard about narcosis, nitrogen narcosis. So we use helium to counteract that. On a dive like we just did, the oxygen content is less than half of what it would be at the surface. So this is a gas that we can't actually breathe at the surface. The helium content was 60%. So basically we're diving a gas that is nothing like what we're used to breathing on the surface. And it's absolutely critical to get the percentages spot on. So our tolerance for the oxygen content on this dive was less than 0.5%. So, we usually talk about 10% or 12%, things like that. For this dive, we used 10.5%. So we were within 0.5%. And the helium has to be at the exact same level. We're critical on that as well.
Now, why? What would happen if they were off?
So if you have too much oxygen, if you get too deep and you have too much oxygen, you have too much pressure, it can affect the central nervous system, and it literally can become toxic. It becomes poisonous, and it's something that you never want to experience. It's so critical. It's something that when we do technical training, it's our mantra that we stay within our gas limits, within our gas limits. Because if we go beyond that and something goes wrong, the potential for injury or worse is high, and it's insidious. So it's hypercritical would be the best way of putting it.
So as Elliot mentioned, one of the things we need to be mindful of is the oxygen content. And one of the reasons we use helium in the mixes of our gases is to reduce that narcotic effect that we have due to nitrogen and oxygen. So he said 60% of our tank was helium. It makes for a funny voice when you're underwater. Like if you start to discuss things or speak underwater, you have a very high-pitched voice, which is always good for a laugh. But that's where the inert gases come into play, and that we use the helium to reduce that narcotic effect and allow us to be more focused and more aware of what's going on. There's no getting around it. I mean, one of our boats is called Martini's Law for a reason. Martini's Law states that as you go down, every 10 meters you go down, it's like having one martini. I wouldn't equate it to that personally, but this is the reason why we need to replace the nitrogen and oxygen in our tanks with helium so that we can function at depths of 122 meters and not be completely laughing.
Yeah, exactly. But then on the way back up, it's really important that we switch back to oxygen. So we have to go through stages of slightly less helium, then more oxygen, and then we go to about 50-50 oxygen and nitrogen with no helium in the tanks at all. And then we finish the dive on pure oxygen. And that again all has to be blended properly, and it has to be done very accurately as well. So that's going to accelerate the process of getting out of the water. It's going to increase our efficiency of decompressing ourselves. That long for that deep, we clearly can't go straight to the surface. So the higher percent oxygen we use to try and drive out and drive down some of that nitrogen and helium that we've absorbed, and then we can get ourselves out of the water. So all levels of gas blending are very important for different reasons, but it's all based around safety.
Mm-hmm. So in total, how long did it take you to reach 122 meters versus how long did it take you to get to the surface?
We got to 122 meters, I recorded on my slate in 4 minutes. And then the total dive time was 76. So I think we started our ascent at around minute 8. So you're looking at 68 minutes of ascent time.
Wow.
Yeah.
One thing that was really interesting to all of us, we spoke about after the dive, was 5 minutes into the dive, we're at 122 meters, and our computers, Shearwater computers, are telling us that we have 49 minutes of deco. So it's very rare to be 5 minutes into a dive and be told you can't surface for another 49 minutes. And that was something that we were all really surprised to see. The algorithms that dictate what we do and how we dive are a really interesting topic for another day. But I've never been on a 5-minute dive where I racked up 50 minutes of deco. So it goes to show the depths we're at.
Yeah, it definitely shows the seriousness of what we're doing and the fact that we're down there and we're looking at, it's an hour to get up. We have to be patient. We have to be disciplined. That's the only way we can get back from such depths.
Patience, not my superpower.
And Elliot, as the TEC Program lead here at UDC, what does it take to become a tech diver in the first place?
You know, it's a program for experienced divers, but the great thing about it is that you can actually get started pretty early. The initial program, the very first course is called TEC 40, and to be honest, all you need is an advanced open water certification, 30 dives, a nitrox certification, and a deep certification is helpful, and at least 10 dives to 30 meters with nitrox. To become a full trimix diver, you need to have more experience. It's 150 dives. You have to work your way through TEC 40, 45, 50, and then start the trimix program. You need to be a rescue diver and 150 dives. But it's a program that we run every week, and we have people from all experience levels that come through. I've had a diver that had 45 dives in an advanced and everything else come through. And my last student did TEC 40 all the way through full trimix, and now he's sailing around the world exploring the deep parts of the ocean. So it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. So overall, it's a very popular course here at UDC.
It is. It's one of our premium courses, but I'm one of the busiest instructors that we have, and I'm really fortunate to be here and have such a great place to work out of. And I owe it to folks like Juicy and Rich that I'm here. So I'm really thankful.
Mm-hmm. And Rich, you took the course actually during COVID. That's
right.
Of all times. How was that experience?
Quite humbling, to be honest. I was relatively experienced by the time I took that course. And me and my good friend Chris, we did it together, and it was different. I'd never dived helium before. It's a different experience. Your voice changes, as Juicy was saying. It's quite funny, and the procedures just get a bit tighter. But other than that, it's a wonderful thing to do. It allows you to do things that not many other people can do, and it really gets a lot of enjoyment going when the dives come. Lots of planning to do, and really good excitement and buzz around the shop when that sort of thing happens.
Mm-hmm. So all three of you dive pretty deep together on a regular basis. Juicy, do you guys have any plans for the future that you want to tell us about?
We're always thinking about the next dive, of course. As we mentioned, the planning and preparation and that aspect of it is something that drives us. So we always have a next dive in mind, and I think everyone should stay tuned and see what we have in store for the coming months. We'll certainly be doing something that will be interesting, and you'll have to wait around and see.
Thank you everyone for joining this week's Sunday Staff Debrief, and thank you as always to our panel. And a special thank you this week to our special guest, Elliot.
Thank you for having me. It was a distinct pleasure, absolutely.
And make sure you all watch next week's episode for another very interesting topic. Please help us grow our channel by
Like the video.
Subscribe to the channel.
And leave a comment below.
See you all next week.
Oh my